All right, this has been a long time coming, Mark. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Me too. I'm excited to be on the show
Oh,
and
thank you.
still be here to be on the show.
I know. So, Mark Bryant, everyone, and I met Mark in a very unusual way. We were walking down the street and bumped into each other in London, and it was my first trip outside of Australia after having, well, pretty much after having kids on my own. So I left my kids at home, went on a big adventure to London, back to the almost homeland for me because I lived there for many years. And
Yeah.
yeah, out to dinner one night and we ended up having dinner together. So it was beautiful. And we were both there for the Health Optimization Summit and the first time it ran, which was a lovely event. Such a incredible thing to organize as well. But obviously we've been in touch since, but not like this. And we've been wanting to do this for some time, and it just happens to be now. So, Mark, let's tell everyone about what your journey is, because it inspired me and it still inspires me to this day. And I still am taken back by what you have, one, gone through, your mentality, and just the dedication to others as well, and to enlighten and support their experiences through your own as well. So let's
Mm.
start there. Tell me where you
Start at the beginning. Yeah. So
the
I
beginning.
think the mindset was was created, to a degree, as Tony Robbins would say, I wasn't like this before. I created this person who I am now. And I'd
Mm,
done all the Tony Robbins programs from about 2010 to 2014. I did Date with Destiny. So, sort of 4 years hardcore with Tony. And that was 8 years after I finished uni. So, for the 8 years between uni and stepping into the world of self development, I didn't do anything. The wheels started to come off. I was working mega hard. I was stressed,
mm,
burning out, CEO and managing director of quite a big company. Um, and in June 2015, once the mindset had been created, but I was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, Philadelphia Chromosome Positive. So, in the world of cancer,
mm,
an acute cancer is not cute by any stretch. It's a fast differentiating cancer that grows very, very quickly. Um, and so that initially started as back pain. I thought I needed a chiropractor until I took myself into or phoned an ambulance when I was away on business in Yorkshire, not London. And yeah, I woke up the next morning in a haze of morphine, and the doctor comes in and says, "Mark, you've got acute leukemia." So, standard of care treatment was to have a full intensity stem cell transplant, which is one of the most toxic cancer treatments humans are exposed to in a sort of 8 week intensive chemo phase. So,
mm,
4 weeks level one, 4 weeks level two, 10. So increase it by level 10. If you're still okay at that point, then they'll take you into hospital. And usually they give you a break in between each cycle. I had no break. I thought I was going to have a break, and then it's like, right, straight into start again. And then the final phase, the third phase, is 48 hours of chemotherapy buffered with saline, followed by 4 days of full body radiotherapy twice a day, a bit like a spit roast. So they turn the big machine on its side, spray it through um, um, a piece of plastic. I can't remember the material. And then it diverts all the rays into your body. So
mm,
instead of going like this, you had to cross your chest. So everything out, just to protect your lungs.
mm,
And, that there was a 50-50 chance of dying from the treatment, let alone my brother's stem cells coming into my body on the 17th September 9 years ago. So it's nearly my ninth birthday. Um, and yeah, I came out the back of there. I was always looking for other strategies to support to not have the stem cell transplant. So in the 8 weeks of chemotherapy, um, I'd had macrobiotic chef come and live with me. I'd worked with a macrobiotic practitioner. I'd reached out to my Tony Robbins network to see if anybody could say, look, yeah, we know how to solve this that doesn't involve all that very heavy artillery and sort of warfare. Um, but I couldn't find the inspiration, and the belief that I could do it without having the stem cell transplant. So I think I worried my family a lot. They're like, "What are you doing, thinking not to do that?" But being a CEO, I had a CEO mindset, and I just transitioned that mindset into being the CEO of my own health.
Yeah.
But it was always in the wake of modern medicine, if I was honest, because as I came into 2016, I thought, what next? I made it through the stem cell transplant. There was a low-level disease detection in early January 16. And then I drifted back into work, thinking like, I didn't really want to be back in the industry and back in the sector and back with my ex-business partners. And I had to make 25 people redundant. It was really stressful. I was only doing part-time. And then in April 16, I had a relapse.
Mm-hmm.
So I now know the prognosis from April 2016 was considered terminal with a high likelihood of death within 6 months.
Wow.
But initially I said, don't tell me the revised prognosis.
Yeah.
I just want to focus on getting well. And that took me on my Hippocrates path journey, which I think you understand the Hippocrates journey, which is more of a raw vegan lifestyle.
Yeah.
Which coincided with a lot of Tony Robbins' detoxification, alkalinity type strategies that he needed to do to overcome his overload of mercury with eating tuna every day.
Mm.
So I switched to the Hippocrates lifestyle, and a few months after that, as well as having some standard of care treatment, which was a targeted therapy at the time, medication, so it was just a daily meds. So I had the time to really focus on believing in in the lifestyle medicine. I was starting to see on a level with standard of care. And what really shifted the mindset, instead of the lifestyle stuff being in the wake of modern medicine, was when I met a naturopath 4 days after the relapse. And he said, "Why did you get cancer in the first place?" I was like, "My oncologist says it's just one of those things." And then he had loads of books on it, and he showed, look, here's possible causations of leukemia: radiation, viruses. Here's some clinical studies to talk about viruses in the food chain, and when they're removed from the food chain, it reduces the leukemia in a population. And you're just like, right. So if there's stuff in my lifestyle that can influence the cancer, then I'm all in. What do I need to do? And I was the most annoying client he'd ever had, because he didn't follow the protocol himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was where sort of the real challenging, the first challenging part came, was in April 16 when I had the relapse.
Goodness me. I have so many things to pull apart from that, but yeah, and I remember you speaking of Hippocrates, and I was big into Hippocrates, prior to meeting you, Brian, and I'd been in London and been to lectures, and it's, for those who don't know, it's a very intensive lifestyle. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of thought. So just in that instance, but root cause, and I guess naturopathic medicine I know closely, and obviously it's not even spoken of much with the modern medicine. No one will mention to you, well, how do you think you got to this point? It's more that obviously that acute reactive, let's move forward and have a solution, but then you're back to square one if you don't actually be looking at some of those underlying issues or traumas or emotions or stuck. So, I guess without diving too much into all of the nitty gritty, but, sort of what sort of thoughts and solutions were you coming up with at this particular point when you had met this naturopath? But for you, going through your mind, thinking, what was the expanse of what I'd set myself up for here?
Well, he suggested 25% cut, 75% raw. He did a bioresonance scan, which then gave me more insight and data on what was going on inside my body. And so he then recommended this protocol. But to do it well, I ended up meeting one of the Hippocrates Health educators. So
Mm-hmm.
Brian and his team, they train. You can either go on the 3-week life transformation or the 3-week life transformation plus 6 weeks of health educator training. And so I met a veterinary surgeon who had chronic fatigue syndrome many years ago, and she found that path and then became a very prolific educator in the UK. So she then helped me systemize this lifestyle that I was recommended to have, because it was with Hippocrates, it's 95% raw, of which 50-60% of the foods are living foods, which are sprouts, broccoli sprouts, alfalfa, radish, clover, sauerkraut, dulse. And so I started to really develop a firm understanding macrobiotics, so understanding seaweeds, which I'd never heard of before. The most potent foods, I still think even to this day, are living foods, little baby sprouts, particularly broccoli sprouts. And then, I wanted to just get to Hippocrates. So I said to Max when she gave me the protocol, who's the food person? Like, teach me the food person, because so she introduced me to Judy, who was another health educator who was more of a foodie than a sciencey. And so she came and lived with me for 3 days, and she taught me how to, live this lifestyle more time efficiently. And I can start to integrate, because I think with food, it's a lot about taste and texture and experience. So I was like, how do I make a curry using this lifestyle? Because I love the curry. And so she taught me some of the things I liked, and I was able to then make it more sustainable long term. And I love food anyway. I love making food. And so I adapted to it quite quickly and quite well. But you're right, it does take commitment and time. Wheatgrass, juicing, and then the growing of the living foods.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree, very potent little baby foods with high high concentration of everything that we need. So, I guess CEO mindset is something that has been such a blessing to you, Mark, I believe, because of the fact that, yes, your solution and you're solution driven. There's a problem. Let's get in there and let's sort this out. And anyone who runs a company or does business in that way has to be, this is it. And then we're sort of sectioning out components and then really becoming very well planned around it. And I think this can be a very good way of looking at, treatment and lifestyle when you've got something so complex in front of you, because it can be it's so scary, and as we spoke about, I still remember a conversation in London. I was just blown away with how you went about it and how clean and systemized it was, without so much. And I know there would have been a lot of emotion there, but you sort of separated that at the times that you really, really needed it. So, I want to go into sort of like where you are and how that came about now, and what that changed, what changed in terms of, has anything shifted in your lifestyle? You went into Hippocrates, you went into a really different way of living compared to how you had been, and obviously that's a major shift. How has that evolved since then? And then obviously where we are today, and why we are here today as well. Let's talk through those last couple of years of what's been going on for you, and also your training. So get into that.
So in 2017, so in 2016, I had a few all clears. So that was amazing, So it was a combination of everything, targeted medicine. I had some more of my brother's cells. In a moment of desperation, I had a moment of inspiration in about August of that year. And I had got graft versus host from my brother's cells. So in that moment of desperation, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially, because when you're physically ill, you become mentally stressed sometimes as well. And so I was in a really bad place, because I was like, how do I pay the bills? I'm leaving my work. I have a mortgage, and as a dad and a provider, I really was under internal pressure. And
Mm.
so I thought maybe my life insurance covers me for something other than death.
Mm.
And some people have critical illness insurance. I don't know if it's the same as where you guys are.
Mm.
But I didn't. I just had life insurance because A, it was cheaper.
Mm.
Um, and B, I never knew what it covered other than death. And it
Mm.
actually covers you for terminal illness, depending on the policy. I had 3 policies and they all paid out because I asked my oncologist and he said, yeah, you're considered terminal. So even though I was considered terminal in April, I was effectively written off in the August, claimed
Mm.
my life insurance and went to Hippocrates for the first time in October. I came back and I was like, right, I'm going to teach everybody, set up the Energize Academy and teach lunch and learn workshops in my house to teach people about living in raw foods. Um, Early in 2017, I had a positive cancer reading, which was low level, but not quantifiable. And so my oncologist in England wanted me to do some treatment then.
Mm.
And I heard about a doctor in Florida who does immune regenerative medicine, who's also a hematologist. So I looked at both options. Option number one was to stay in England and do nothing other than lifestyle. Option number two was to do something, which was a drug that you have to be in hospital for 1 month, 24 hours a day on a drip, not allowed out of the ward. Or option number three was to go and do something in America, which my oncologist in England thought was quackery. So I thought, well, no, he can't be that. He's a transplant physician. He started transplants before my oncologist in the UK finished university, I think. He's a bit older than Adrian. And so I was like, can't they just speak to each other and work out the best strategy? Anyway, I decided to go to America,
Yeah.
being told that I was wasting my kid's inheritance. So I went and I came back to the UK and had another bone marrow. It was all clear. And my oncologist in England sent me the result and said, what do I know? Doesn't matter. Great result. So that was the first kind of process I went through in terms of weighing up the treatment I had with standard of care. And I decided to go and still have medical treatment under the supervision of another expert with a different approach. So,
Mm.
and in business, you have a HSE guy and an operations guy, and they're at war disagreeing on a certain strategy, and someone in the middle has to go, look, I hear you, but we need to go this way, or I'm going this way. So
Mm.
that's the way I kind of saw it, is that you're going to have opposing people on the team. And I've just had to go through the same thing this last week to be where I am now, which is in San Diego.
Right.
So anyway, I did 4 rounds of this treatment in Florida. So 6 weeks back to England, 4 weeks, and then back to America, away from my young children and Fiona. It was stressful for them. It was all
Mm.
right for me. I was living in Hippocrates and I was in a health institute in the sunshine, and going to yoga classes every day. And it's kind of like, it's not how people would see cancer treatment. And what I say now is, like, when you think about cancer treatment, it's not just the chemotherapy, it's not just the radiotherapy, it's not the surgery, it's everything from what we eat, how we sleep, how we move, and all the other supplementary things we can do to layer on top of that, and how much time we spend in nature. Like,
Yeah.
they are potent pieces of the medicine practice. And it's not just about what we see in standard of care. And so many people give their, particularly in the NHS, where everything's paid for in the UK. It's not the same in other places. I think there's a little bit more responsibility in different countries, westernized countries, but in the UK, it's almost like people become powerless to the doctors. Like, you tell me what to do and I'll say, you say jump and I'll say how high.
Similar.
So anyway, so 4 rounds, and I came back to England. And through that 18 months, I started to unpack the psychosomatic parts of my recovery, which
Mm.
was to do with the trauma, the spiritual aspect of it, my relationship with God, psychotherapy, exploring childhood trauma, generational trauma, so I've done lots of different practices in that realm too. And I came back and thought, right, I'm going to do an Ironman. But the thing is, with leukemia like this, it's quite a difficult, challenging mutation. But Buggerlugs here thought, let's go and do an Ironman. And so I came back to England with the intention of doing an Ironman, because I was on my vision board when I had the stem cell transplant. Yeah. And so 2018, I did my first triathlon. 2021, I did a half Ironman equivalent. And then in 2022, I did the full distance Ironman in Ireland, which is a challenging event. Which has quite a lot of climbing in it. And I finished the finish line 2 years ago in August in 14 hours. So I went from terminal to triathlon. So yeah, that was taking us to 22.
Wow. So questions around the treatment, and I'll come back to the triathlon in a minute, or the Ironman, because I know how crazy the training can be for that Ironman. So I'll come back to that. But with the treatment, so how do you feel when you're going through so far on the treatments? So I think this is really important to speak to. We also have a lot of cancer in our clinic. Clients coming in that are working through cancer themselves. But there's so many different, obviously, forms of treatments in different ways. But how are you feeling through your forms of treatment, and what did that look like?
It's changed because I've always had my feet in both camps, and I think that's where an integrative approach is more, it helps people understand that it's not one or the other, it's both.
Exactly.
Because, a lot of what we might see as alternative treatment or alternative cancer treatment, it's not, where we create separation creates, stress. And so I think an integrative, personalized approach to medicine where we involve the best of both worlds is the best way to go. So I'll speak to where I am now, because I think it's better than where I was before. Because what happened was, the way I see it now is what I did before in combination with the other stuff. I believe the lifestyle was more potent than the standard of care medicine. But what I did before just seemed to work. Like everything, the ingredients that formulated my protocol, my strategy, just seemed to work. And other than having to navigate the full body radiotherapy and the consequence of that being 3 weeks in hospital on total parenteral nutrition, injecting myself with self-injected morphine, not being able to eat or drink for 3 weeks.
Wow.
I at the time, I just did it. Take each day as it comes. It's the only way you can be in that situation. And I can speak to that even more potently when I come up to 2020, end of 23. So I did the Ironman. 2 months after the Ironman, I had a relapse. So factors that affected that was, I don't think the Ironman per se, it was how I trained after the Ironman. So additional oxidative stress, trying to beat my pre-cancer time in a half marathon, which was a bit silly, so close to an Ironman. Coming into winter in England, not really tested my standard set of bloods, which I now know is important. And I had a very stressful financial legal case on at the time, 2 weeks after the Ironman. So when you add all of that into one pot, I'm not hardly surprised I had a relapse. So I had built immune surveillance. The cancer never fully went away for those 3 or 4 years, but my immune surveillance was good enough that for most of that time I was on no medication. So the work I'd done in Florida with Maharaj, the guy that I've just come out of treatment 2 days ago, worked. But the challenge was, I always wanted to go back, and I did terminal to triathlon to raise money to go back, but nothing manifested to give me the financial ability to do it. which is frustrating, when somebody like me wants to find a way to do it myself. And so this relapse came about. I went on another medication. It worked for a bit. And then in August last year, 2023, I had another relapse. So as cancer gets older, it gets more wise, and it develops resistance to standard of care medications. And so I developed really good resistance to pretty much everything that was being thrown at me. So in Christmas, coming up to Christmas, they were trying to get me ready for CAR T therapy. And on a test that we did to test which meds could work, there was one that could, but they couldn't get funding for it. And I wasn't well enough to travel, like literally. So I went through 3 rounds of treatment from September, October, November, December, January, February. In February, at the end of the 3rd round of treatment, I was given the wrong meds, and I ended up in nearly in critical care with a sodium level of 109. And I thought that was me done. And so sometimes when my fight and strategy and thinking seemed to play out for me, this time it didn't. And I just had to almost be just trust that, I would wake up each day and be grateful for that day, because yes, I could do the basics. I started to train with the Metabolic Institute of Health with Dr. Naisha Winters, being taught how to be an advocate for the metabolic approach to cancer. So I met her in 2019 when we met each other, and I hadn't really delved into her book because I thought I knew it. But when I really delved into her book, it's Dr. Naisha's work that's really helped me bring everything I've learned in the last 9 years together. So I've been studying for the last 9 months whilst I've been going through this to become one of her advocates. And I ultimately had the CAR T a week out of hospital after the toxic overload, medical error. I said to my oncologist the day I left, I was so angry because I'd been given these wrong meds. And I was in tears in front of him, like boiling. He was in tears to me, saying he was sorry. And he said, I just hope you're going to be able to recover well enough to have the CAR T treatment. Because A, we don't know if it's going to work, but it's your only option other than palliative care. So I had the CAR T and it worked for 2 months. And then I had another relapse in July. And the blessing is that one of the team managed to get me funding for this drug that we knew about 6 months earlier. And so I was given that, and in the end of July, and I said, if there's a time like there was in 2016 when I was given the dasatinib, as it was called, I was now been given iscriminib, and I thought, now's the time to go to America. So I put a GoFundMe campaign, Save a Dad, and I flew to America. Once I knew I wasn't trending in the wrong way. So I traveled here at the end of August, or to Florida, and did 2 weeks with Maharaj. And I've come to do another week's worth of treatment with another doctor here in San Diego.
Wow, goodness me. I want to dive into the treatments now from the last couple of weeks. But
it is like, for the first time, I felt like before, it's always been like I've got a fire and a fight in me now, because I feel like I know enough about longevity medicine, lifestyle medicine, the metabolic approach to cancer, and I'm very good at networking. So I've been introduced to something else that I'm going to be doing this week that could change the game.
This is absolutely incredible. And and again, as time goes on and your journey through this, you've become the expert, as most people become in their own treatment, in their own life, and as they should be, because you're the one advocating and navigating that exactly as you are. So I guess again, it's really good to hear if you want to share. But what does a relapse look like for you, Mark? Like what does that in a day, and how you're feeling and how that impacts you? How does that feel? And is each relapse similar for you?
Again, every cancer and every individual will be different. Yeah, there's not. It's very hard, and I'm sure you see that with other chronic
Mm.
illnesses within your clinic practice.
Yeah.
And so for me, I've got good energy anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and a lot of our energy we can internally create. So I think I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm the guy that's walking up and down the corridor and getting 10,000 steps in more than the nurses on the corridor, like I'm the guy that takes a rebounder into the hospital
Yeah.
and I got told off by the health and safety officer. Um,
I love.
I was the one that was in the gym a week after um, I came out of hospital when I was at my lowest point just in February this year. Um, Pushing a sled, even though it was light, so movement and exercise has always been there. So a relapse to me, one good thing about acute leukemia,
Mm.
other than if it grows out of control, you're fucked. Excuse my French.
Go.
Um, so unless something can put the forest fire out,
Yeah.
I mean, I joke about it, but it is serious.
Yes.
I'm well. So I'm either well or not very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's not much in between. So the worst physically I've ever felt with the illness, well, twice. Once was in 2015 when I was diagnosed.
Mm.
And since then, it's always been at a level that it didn't hurt. Because what happens with acute leukemia, it packs the bones out because you've got mutated cells that are occupying space in your bones. So it's internal pressure on your bones, and it just hurts in your ribs and your hips and your lower back. And then I had to be rushed into hospital before Christmas just last year because I had another relapse, despite going through round 1 of the treatment. So
Goodness.
yeah, it's big decisions to come away on my own
Yeah.
with one medication
Yeah.
because it took time to rebuild my immune system in 2017 and early 18. So I
Mm.
came here at the end of August thinking, oh, it's such a big hill to climb. But when I tested my immune system, it was not as bad as I thought it was.
That's amazing. That's incredible. And
So I was very lucky, very lucky. So, I can't speak to anybody else's physical wellness, but what I do know is that I'm good at creating my own energy. So therefore I get to do more things than most people would do in an ill state, if that makes sense.
yeah, but I think there and yeah, fully appreciate that everyone is different and going to experience differently. But I think the key messages and the key components of what I really love about you, Mark, is that you create it yourself, and that's that mental energy and the mental capacity and the drive and the outlook. And I see this with chronically ill clients all the time, and I think if only you could just see a little bit and just motivate yourself a little bit more, but it's sometimes it's really hard. So I think the stories and the information and hearing in your words about these sorts of scenarios, it really empowers people, and it's like, oh well, I have that option, that I can get to that. Even if I am at my lowest point, it will get better, and I will be feeling better. So I think it's that hope, and hope is huge. And yeah, so thank
There's
you.
a Dr. Nasha wrote in the metabolic approach to cancer that she
Yeah.
wrote with Kelly. I can't remember her name now, but anyway, it's two of them. And
Mm.
one of the quotes in there was, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings."
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
even though I think there's probably a better quote out there, you're not dead until you take your last breath. But that
Yeah.
was what I was waking up to, saying it's not over yet,
Yeah.
until the fat lady sings. It's not over until I take my last breath. So I'm here today. So
Yeah.
what can I do today that's going to help me move forward?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the mentality going through the most challenging few months,
Yes.
where I wasn't powerless by any stretch, but I had to rely on other people helping me, the nurses, the medical team. Um, yeah, so that was the first time I kind of accepted that care and support and said, okay, I feel supported, and I'm allowing that support in, which for me has been it's been more of a therapy based journey, really, to see that I don't have to try and fix everything. I don't have to solve all these problems. Yeah. Are you still there? You've frozen.
Sorry, Mark, my
Oh, you're
internet
there.
just dropped out. I'll come back in.
There we go. There we go.
I will cut that one out. But yeah, so we got to letting the support in. So I'll just get you to restart that where you were. Sorry.
They were really good words. I've forgotten what they were. I said I think I had to really accept for the first time the support, the care, and the love that I was being offered. Like from my friends. Like I've always been a lone warrior, and part of my inner work has been, not to be that boarding school child that became super independent when he went off to boarding school when he was 12. And so that was a very psychological journey as well as a physical and a spiritual journey. The episode within the CAR-T journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a survival mechanism, isn't it? It's for those who are very independent, empowered, and don't accept help. It can be very, as you say, it's a lonely journey sometimes, but it's not always necessary. And sometimes we need to accept help in multiple ways, even healing support, and from practitioners. And sometimes if those personalities, and I am one of these as well, which is why I sympathize so much with them, or empathize as well, in that accepting help sometimes can come as like a threat or a protection mechanism, but we need to accept that in to actually have full fruition and information. As you say, it's really networking when we think about it, and reading information and letting that in and letting people support us in different ways. We're always learning then. But sometimes it can feel like a threat, and sometimes it can be a big lesson to learn. And so yeah, I completely sympathize with you there.
Yeah, because and trusting the process as well.
Yeah.
There was my mindset for the 3 months before, 2 months before I said yes to CAR-T. I was like, how can I avoid CAR-T? And I was therefore thinking about everything that was bad about CAR-T that I'd learned about over the previous 8 years. And then my advocate that I worked with said, what happened if it was a good thing? I was like, and I was at the point where I had to say yes. Otherwise, it was sayonara. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, how could this be good? And all I then focused on that this could be a cure. Yeah, like it could be a cure. So I went in to the CAR-T treatment, believing that it could be a cure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Although it wasn't, but then I had to make adjustments, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah. So what the last couple of weeks, what does that look like? So, landing in Florida, beautiful place. Really quite like Florida. What's the last couple of weeks brought you to, and what are you doing now? And then we'll sort of discover a little bit more about all that.
Yeah. So I launched a GoFundMe campaign 3 or 4 days before I came here. I was nervous, mega nervous. I'm not going to be able to generate the cash flow or create the cash flow to be able to pay the doctor, 2 days after or a day after I landed. So I landed on the Thursday night and I was straight into clinic on Friday.
Right.
The last weekend in August. And so yeah, I pitched up to the clinic. I had my assessment. I went and had a ECG, and it showed an irregular ECG. So I panicked for about 2 hours. And you can imagine the level of inner turmoil I'm in, like feeling like I'm being judged by my medical team in the UK because they're trying to get me ready for a second stem cell transplant.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm trying to, because that could be quite challenging to go through that. With my sister being a match, I'm very lucky that I've got 2 sibling matches. So I thought, could I rescue my immune system? So that's why I've come here to
Mm.
test it. So it's a dance between data and my destiny. So I really have to trust my intuition and say, right, this is the right thing. I'm asking all my friends to support this mission financially and emotionally and invest in me to come out to America and do this 2 rounds of treatment. And so I did 2 weeks of treatment. It's not onerous treatment. It's in the clinic for about an hour a day. They take my bloods, check my bloods every day, and then they give me the medication once a day. And it's a protein or an enzyme that helps activate the immune system, and regenerate and repopulate. So
Yes.
the initial test, which I have results for, I don't have the one from Friday we've just done, showed that, for an example, there's 75 immune panel markers. There's nobody else I know in the world that looks at an immune panel. Instead of just a blood panel looking at red, white cells and all that, we're looking at 75 markers that create the standard blood markers that we're looking at for slight irregularities. So
Mm.
things like, how many cytotoxic T cells have I got? How many natural killer cells have I got? What's the function of the natural killer cells? What are my cytokine levels, which is a precursor to inflammation in the body.
Mm.
And so when I've had this treatment before, all of the markers trended up over the 12 months worth of treatment I had. So we're expecting the same thing to happen again.
Mm.
So I just need to see what that result is, and then I can decide what my next piece of the jigsaw is. So I can't plan to next year. I just have to get this block done. And then I discovered that there's some pioneering treatment here, in San Diego, which I'm going to do. But I can't share too much on in terms of the technicalities of what it is, because it is pioneering.
Right.
So
That's
yeah,
good.
it's all in the realm of stem cells. And we're using photodiamond therapy, vitamin C, and EBU. So, but it's a combination of a week's worth of protocols that is working extremely well for other people.
Wow, that is so super exciting. I can't wait to hear about that when you're allowed to speak on it. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. All right. So you're gearing up for a week in San Diego now. Yeah. And I can imagine, leaving your family, you've got 2 girls, it's something that you're on your own again, over there. And I know it's, you're, powerhouse and a lone soldier, you can do it, but it does take a lot to have support from afar, and to not have, physically your family around you as well. So it can just add that extra layer, can't it? So, and you're there for a mission and you're, there and then home again. So, but I can imagine like the turmoil that you go through while you're there, and as you said, you're nervous as well for the outcome, and if you can actually be able to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, like having the therapist I'm working with once a week at the moment has been a game changer. And what I'll say to anybody else listening to this now is that my journey is not normal. I know many other people within my cancer community, yeah, for want of a better word, that have had amazing results with their particular conditions, their particular illnesses, following more of a metabolic approach to cancer, and even the raw vegan approach. It,
Mm.
what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other, but it's not like everybody has to travel across the world to do some of these things. It's just that in my case, I've found that has been what I've needed to do. So you don't all have to do what I've done, in your own individual journey. And that's why I'd recommend anybody work with an expert, work with a practitioner, and between you building your team and your own intuition, you then decide what is the best direction for you. So yeah, I just don't want people to get overwhelmed with
Yeah.
listening to what I speak to, because it doesn't have to be as crazy as mine has been.
Yeah. I think the key points to take away is, as we said earlier, is the mindset, the belief the hope, and always, until the fat lady sings, there's always another day, and there's always something for you to be working towards and bettering in and learning. You're doing courses, as you said. Naisha Winter is just an incredible woman who has the most amazing knowledge. I've listened to so many things, and obviously she is a colleague friend of one of my colleagues, and the information, I think, is just has to be put out there so people feel secure, and that there is so many different options, and they have options, and it's not just the standard of care, as we said before. UK is similar to Australia, is that we have a healthcare system that, yes, we are blessed to have given. We have a lot of the healthcare paid for us, but it also comes at a cost, because you sell yourself to whatever that information is coming at you for, and you're not always able to discern which is the best or which is another option, and so that can be, as you say, it's not always the greatest thing. So now you're doing courses, now you're helping, you're educating, and you have been already for years through this whole process, coaching and supporting so many different people. And I know that your aims and goals for next year is looking incredible in terms of what you've been learning. So do you want to talk us through a little bit of that as well, of what your plans coming up are?
Yeah, so I launched a GoFundMe, which is now the goal to get this block of treatment done as well, is £65,000.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a lot of money for, to most of us, and it is. And when we compare that to standard of care cancer treatment, it's a drop in the ocean to what we don't have a feel for what is being spent on our healthcare.
Yes.
And so there's this complete imbalance of, and I think Trump and Bobby Kennedy, when they were on stage a few weeks ago, and I saw it on the Truth About Cancer Instagram channel, where they're taking on big pharma, they're taking on big agriculture, and they want to change the health of the US population, and big food as well. So I did the launch to GoFundMe. So I was 65. We're at 35 now. So
35.
That's mission one, is to get A, this treatment done, and B, raise the funds to get it all paid for.
Yeah.
Then I've been thinking and having some quiet time, or time to myself, not necessarily quiet, over the last couple of weeks. I was thinking, what is my mission? Having done the advocacy course, I can see how I can add value to the world of cancer prevention and cancer recovery. And so in my speaking world, as a speaker that I have been speaking about mental resilience and motivational resilience and mindset, I've been thinking, what could I do? So my old mission was energize 1 million people with raw and living foods. But what I'm thinking now is that I really want to empower 1 million cancer patients in their own recovery. So at the moment, there's 20 odd million cancer diagnoses each year, of which there's a concurrent amount of 50 million cancer patients around the world. So if I could impact 1 million of them, we're going to start creating a critical mass that's going to help change the healthcare system. And so we need a critical mass in order to do that. So that's where this Empower 1 Million Cancer Patients will come from.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And so that's my mission. I want to teach people the metabolic approach to cancer through initially a free course. And then, there's an army of advocates, and there's an army of practitioners that Dr. Naisha is creating through the Metabolic Institute of Health. So where I can fit into this is really being able to structure it. So I've created a thing called the cancer, what's it called? The cancer mindset method. Okay, so what's the mindset a cancer patient needs to cultivate in order to approach a very challenging situation? And so the first part of the word C, cancer, is to be curious, ask questions, look outside the box, don't be closed-minded, be open-minded. and start to ask yourself questions. And sometimes you'll ask the oncologist questions, like I did with my stepdad. My stepdad stayed in the wake of modern medicine, and I felt powerless in him not being inspired to take action. But sometimes we can't change people's mindset. Like the radiologist to my stepdad said to my stepdad and me, it's been proven in scientific evidence that nutrition and lifestyle medicine does not work. And there was a study, he cited it from 1960 something, so 40 years out of date, 50 years out of date. And my stepdad came around and said, see, I told you it wouldn't work. I'm like, so be curious and don't believe everything you're being told, and really believe in people like Jodie, who have decades of experience, like my practitioner in the UK, Joe Gamble, like Dr. Maharaj over here, and the new doctor I'm going to work with here. There is, listen to Dr. Naisha's lectures. She's a 30-year stage 4 cancer survivor who became a medical practitioner, who got the best results and thought, I'm not having as much of an impact as I could if I taught everybody else what I know from clinical practice in the medical world. So number one, be curious. And then the A is to develop a level of awareness of, what's going on for you physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like Dr. Naisha put the emotional component as the last chapter in a book, because most people don't want to open Pandora's box.
I don't want to go
and
there.
I encourage you to bring awareness to that. And so, so I've created the cancer mindset method, which I won't go into all the other elements, but they're the first two.
That's incredible. As you're speaking.
And then the second part of it, which I'm not sure how all this is going to fit together, is the personalized lifestyle medicine protocol. And lifestyle will speak to each of the terrain 10 that Dr. Naisha speaks to in the metabolic approach to cancer. So I like to create a sticky acronym. So
it sticks there.
That will help people remember it.
As you were speaking there, Mark, I was thinking about your approach and your wish to impact, so many million, and also the incredible increase, obviously, of what we're discovering now with cancer cases. So I was thinking, cancer, we had this, war on cancer, and we had this, this fear of cancer, but what if cancer, as you say, is here to, and those who have a form of cancer, to transform the healthcare, like you say, it's a relearning and unlearning and relearning, and a spreading of the word and empowerment across masses who are now suffering with cancer and cancer cases, and for them to be making the change. So is cancer has the impact of changing the way that we see our medical system and our medical care, and moving the needle in that way, because not more, as we've seen from you, Mark, in that motivation, when you're given that, you can either take it this road or this road. And if you take it down the empowerment road and the change road, then you have so much to gift the rest of the world and the medical system and yourself. So we can see it as a transformative.
And your children.
And
your children.
Yes, absolutely. And see that.
Like the cancer rates in 30 to 50-year-olds over the last 30 years, whilst the incidence is still relatively low, as in it used to be 120 in 100,000. Over the last 20 years, it's increased to between 200 and 280. So it's increased by 50%. So when the first brush with cancer I had was my mum dying in 2013. I've never heard of any of their friends being diagnosed with cancer. And now I know a guy who I was best friends with at uni. His wife died and has left 4 kids last year, and we were at uni together. My other housemate, one of my other housemates from a different year, his wife was diagnosed with brain cancer. Another one of my uni friends, who again is my age, 46, his wife's just been diagnosed with brain cancer. He thought he was going through a midlife crisis. She got depression, low energy, wasn't really being able to do the mother thing, and it transpires that she's got this big tumor in her brain. It's just like, what? One of my first wife that I got married to behind the sofa when I was 9, her husband left 2 kids 2 years ago with colon cancer. And this is all in my age group, you know? And these are people I would have stayed connected with. It's not just because we've got social media or we're getting better at diagnosing. It's crazy, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
It is.
precursor to cancer is chronic illness, metabolic illness.
Mm.
So unless we've got to address our metabolic health, which will then influence cancer rates and other disease statistics.
Yeah. And the most obvious and blaring elephant in the room is that we're not living, as we said off air prior to starting, we're not living as to nature's laws. We're not living in the sunshine, and we're too stressed. We're living indoors. We're under fake lights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that we talk about all the time and on this podcast as well. It's like the most blaringly obvious. What are we missing? What have we been missing, and what's becoming less apparent in our daily lives? Nature. It's so obvious.
Nature, connection, community. Yeah, nature
Exactly.
calls it CDC.
Yes.
Circadian rhythm, daylight, and community.
And community, absolutely. CDC. Yeah, couldn't say it better. Goodness me. So incredible, Mark. This has just been, wow, such a journey. I don't want to hold you up because I know you have to go to bed soon because we're at opposite ends of the world. But let's talk about your mindset, your resiliency, your do you have a stepped process? And I know you are creating one. Obviously, you've just said this with your coaching and supporting. But your daily habits, your daily things that you do yourself, and even now that you're traveling, like what does that look like? How do you structure your day, even though it may be chaotic and different and you're landing in different places? Like, are there some consistencies that you keep in your day every day to keep you grounded and supported? What are those things? What do you love to do?
Being in Florida and here now. So day one is finding my local health network.
Yep.
Where sells clean food. So a cafe, somewhere I could eat at night. And this trip, I've stayed in a place where I can do some of my own food. So supermarket, restaurant, cafe. So that's what I've been mapping out today. Being in nature. So I went and did 2 hours on the beach today, got on the sea. And I did the same whilst I was in Florida, so just changing my exercise up to be in nature. So did a bit of swimming in the sea, like with my goggles on, and just nice steady state cardio. Tech-free meditation. As in, I learned transcendental meditation, which is an inward mantra meditation. So I use meditation every day. Sometimes with tech, I've got New Calm and I've got Sensate. And psychotherapy once a week to keep my energy clean. He's a shadow, trauma shadow informed practitioner using internal family systems, and that has been amazing. So internal family systems tapping and somatic awareness. So that's been a different type of therapy because I'm very good at going 0 to 100 miles an hour. And so this is really about being in the energy, even if it is this uncomfortable. And so we tend to look at the uncomfortable shadow energy in our sessions. And each session you go into, it feels a bit like plant medicine. You think you don't want to drink it. It's like, so knowing that's where we're going. But it always feels better afterwards.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, like non-negotiable is exercise, whether it's a walk, in the gym, building muscle mass at the moment, so low repetitions, hypertrophy, but not creating oxidative stress in the body. Good hydration. I've been using, if you want to know all my strategies, I've been using,
I think, for the amount that you're doing.
If you want me to unload, because I know you're aware of a lot of these things. So current practices include deuterium depletion. So
Beautiful.
I've read Dr. Gabor Shalmai's book, and I've worked with him. He's been very supportive of me. So I've used a bit of deuterium depletion. I got my first deuterium test back last week, and I was at 135, which was better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just connection and community. So
wherever you are.
Like I'd closed off my metabolic approach to cancer advocacy community. Like I hadn't been in touch with them or done our weekly UK study group call because I've been traveling. And so last week they put on a call specifically for me. And I just, that was amazing. So community is another big important aspect, particularly for cancer patients where, a lot of people don't get it, because they're not in that situation. So having them there to hold space, or us to hold space for each other, has been potent. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And very supportive.
Absolutely.
So they're my main strategies. Food-wise, which I know you probably want to know. Sleep is always my thing. I've got an Aura ring. Sometimes I take it off for periods of time because I'm just like, I want to connect with me more. But I've used my Aura ring trying to maintain good sleep balance and stay in bed and just put the new calm on for an extra hour to help with my recovery. And food, I'm more of Dr. Nasha's approach, which is more of a, using intermittent fasting, a weekly water fast, which I'm getting better at. Not very good at fasting.
Just 24 hours or long?
I've done, longer fasts, like 3 days. So 3 days once a month, it depends on the individual and where they are in their journey. So the practitioner would advise, but getting into a fasting protocol. So, doing 16-8 windows. So I fasted on the way here yesterday through my flight, and then I ate this morning. So I had like 36 hours between food.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And then, I'm not vegan, but I do eat a lot of above ground greens and, good quality pasture raised and wild proteins.
Yeah, beautiful. So there's been sort of an evolution of the nutrition as well for you, which is I find fascinating because myself as well, I've evolved, and you learn and you have to, otherwise, what do? We can't just stay the same all the time. So, how you feel through that, how have you felt through that evolution? Because I know as someone who can be, and I see this in clients as well, you get put into a box and you say that you're going to stay here for a little while, and then when you move out of that box it can feel really unsteady for a little while. So why should I be doing this? Is this the wrong thing to do? Is this the right thing to do? Was there any of that for you as you sort of evolved through different stages of nutrition?
Like I went back to Hippocrates a few times when I was here, and obviously I'd been following more of a metabolic approach. And then I see Brian and I say hello, and then you hear the stories of people on stage, and I was one of those stories on stage because I went to their graduation on a Friday afternoon. And the food was amazing. Like my body lit up like a Christmas tree when I was eating the big plates of all the sprouts, and it was amazing. The juice and their wheatgrass, which is grown with this particular Canadian wheatgrass seed, is amazing. And so I was like, going on this journey. And then I was, then I had a conversation with somebody, random Paul, who was a health coach, and she really went at me for eating not being a vegan. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I was just like, the separation that we're experiencing around food and religion is not conducive to creating a united new front that we need to find within humanity, as we're trying to rediscover ourselves and awaken ourselves from this last 50 years of industrialization. And so, yeah, I don't think that's useful when you've got people polarizing. And most of the information we receive when we're eating food, I found, is having other people's narratives and not listening to my own intuition when it comes to my food. So
Yes.
and I always remember somebody saying to me, Jasmine Helmsley, who wrote East to West, who's more macrobiotic focused, she said to me, it's not the food that we eat, it's how we think and feel about the food that matters. And so there's always that centering time before I eat where I'm priming my body and removing all the recent social media I may have digested to
Yeah.
tell me why the food that I've got on my plate is bad, because I can guarantee you that it doesn't matter what you put on your plate, you can find evidence to support why it's a load of crap.
Anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
let's just be a carnivore. You can't eat greens because you're going to kill yourself with oxalates. And yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you answered that in that way, because I feel exactly the same way, Mark. I find it so damaging, some of the limitations that people put on themselves and the trauma around being bullied. Like you just said, it's being bullied about your choices for your own body. And the intuition removal is so far-fetched. And yeah, I think it has to be an intuitive way of eating. It has to be. And it has to be that, I get so many clients say to me, it's the most common thing. He's like, well, I had chocolate. I'm so sorry. I'm like, great. I love that you've had chocolate, but let's make it better. Let's make it even
Yeah.
better. Like, why do you feel guilty about that? So you had it, great, love it. I eat the worst things, and I'm like, oh, that was so good. I really enjoyed that, but I'm not going to be having this every day. No, no, no. So
Exactly.
it's something that, again, it's from the mindset. It's from the energy that we're telling ourselves on how it actually is being consumed, and then our body is receiving in so many different ways, and it should be a positive way, and no matter what we choose. So yeah, I love to hear this. I love to hear this from you. It's so many different things have its different timelines as well, doesn't it? It has its purposes for a timeline, and then you have to really listen in and actually know when that needs to shift or change or move or evolve. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as clean as we can get, like when I was in hospital, I bought food in from outside kitchen. It wasn't
Mm,
in full alignment with sort of the nutritional strategy I was following at the time.
mm,
However, it was clean.
yes.
As
Yeah.
in, but it did have to get microwaved to get heated up. So,
Mm,
sometimes we just have to do the best we can do and
mm,
be good about it.
yeah.
Yeah. At
Yeah.
least I ate the food, because if I just ate the hospital food, I couldn't eat the hospital food. Like my standards are a little bit higher than 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 I was able to admit or accept into my body. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there has to be a draw the line though.
I tried. I tried. It was just like, oh, yeah.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I would be exactly the same. Oh, this has been such a pleasure, Mark. I really hope we can do this again very soon, because I really want to hear about your second stage of treatments that you're doing now, because now you've got me. Now I'm way too curious. I'm like, ooh, tell me, tell me, tell me. No,
Well,
um, yeah,
when we finish this podcast, I don't mind telling you.
okay, all right. Well, everyone will have to wait. Everyone else will have to wait. No,
Yeah.
no.
So I'll leave them with my cancer mindset method. So
Yes,
be
please.
curious, um, develop your own internal awareness, develop your own internal intuition, nurture your recovery. So,
Mm,
one step at a time. Have commitment to it, commit to the result, commit to the outcome. and commit to yourself, 100% commit to yourself that you've got this and you're going to get through this, you're going to find a way, then you'll become empowered and develop a level of resilience, because it's not always going to go in a straight line. So get ready for the speed bumps.
Absolutely.
And that elicitation spells cancer.
There you go. That's incredible, Mark. I love it. I absolutely love it. So we'll pop this up for everyone. We'll put all the information, your GoFundMe, and we'll be sharing that on socials this week and everything as well. So, yes.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to me.
Such an inspiration, Mark. And we'll do this again very soon.